This is our new series, Unsolved Mysteries. Join us each week as we explore the paranormal unknown. It's the middle of the night in an abandoned asylum. You hear a blood-curdling scream that seems to come from nowhere and nowhere. Then you feel something cold brush against your neck, like the touch of a fingernail. You spin around, but there's no one there. Your flashlight beam reveals only dust motes dancing in the moonlight, filtering through a grimy window high above. But then you hear a voice, raspy and low, whispering right behind you, "Get out while you can." And before you can respond, it's gone. Paranormal investigators are no strangers to unsettling experiences like this. In fact, most have at least one story they love to tell about their brush with the unknown. These are some of the creepiest and most disturbing stories ever told by those who dared to investigate the paranormal. We begin with the Danvers State Hospital, a sprawling, desolate mental institution situated just north of Boston in Massachusetts. It's one of the most investigated sites in America and even has its own ghost hunting society dedicated to unearthing its secrets. The history of this place is dark. It was established in 1774 as the first public hospital for the insane in the United States. Over the years, it housed over 14,000 patients, many of whom were subjected to unethical and inhumane practices, including lobotomies, electroconvulsive therapy, and insulin shock therapy. One evening, paranormal investigators set up in the old morgue. Suddenly, the lights flickered on and off. They could hear footsteps pacing nearby, and then they saw the shadow of a woman carrying a lantern pass by the door. When they checked outside, they found no one. Other teams have seen her too. She appears as a translucent figure dressed in old-fashioned clothing and holding a lantern. Some say she's the ghost of Mary, a former patient who died here in 1924 after being lobotomized. Others say she's the spirit of Horace, a former attendant who drowned in the Danvers River in 1938. But the stories don't end there. There are other restless spirits said to haunt the halls of Danvers, including a little girl in a Victorian nightgown who wanders the second floor and a man in a wheelchair who appears in photographs taken by unsuspecting visitors. But perhaps the most disturbing apparition is the so-called Porter Man. He's often seen in the basement where patients were subjected to electroshock therapy. Many investigators believe he's the ghost of a former patient named John, who died during one of these treatments. One team even captured what they believed to be his voice on tape. They were sitting in the basement when they heard a loud bang followed by a whisper that sent chills down their spines. "Leave," it said. "Leave now." They didn't stick around to find out who was behind the warning. In recent years, Danvers has become a popular destination for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. Many believe that the spirits here are restless and want to be left alone, but others say that they're friendly and just want to communicate with the living. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. If you visit Danvers, you should beware of the ghosts of Danvers State Hospital. But our journey takes us to another abandoned asylum, this time to Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. Built in 1910, this place was once a state-of-the-art facility for treating tuberculosis, but by the 1960s, it had become overcrowded and underfunded. Many patients were left without proper treatment, and the death rate soared. It was here that one of the most famous ghost hunting videos of all time was captured. The images are haunting. A figure in a nurse's uniform walks down a dimly lit hallway. She disappears around a corner and then reappears at the end of the hall as if she'd vanished into thin air. The team investigating caught her on camera. No, not her. Her ghostly apparition was only visible to the naked eye. They continued following her down the hall, hoping to catch her doing something or perhaps even communicate with her. But she disappeared before their eyes and their cameras once more. Some believe the ghost is the spirit of a nurse who died at the sanatorium in 1961. Others say it's the soul of a patient who succumbed to tuberculosis in the 1920s. Whatever the case may be, one thing is certain. Waverly Hills is home to a variety of spirits, some friendly and some not so much. Waverly Hills is home to a variety of spirits, some friendly and some not so much. One team of paranormal investigators was exploring the attic when they heard the sound of footsteps approaching them. They turned around to see a pair of shadowy figures walking toward them. The apparitions appeared and disappeared several times throughout the night. One investigator later described them as the two creepiest things I've ever seen. Our next stop is at the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia. This sprawling brick building was once home to nearly 2,400 patients. Sadly, many of them were subjected to horrific experiments and mistreatment by the staff. One former patient described how he witnessed the inhumane conditions firsthand. "The food was terrible. It tasted like cat food," he recalled. "They never gave us any privacy. And if you tried to talk to anyone in authority, they would just ignore you or threaten you." One experiment involved injecting patients with malaria and letting them die so that doctors could study the effects on the brain. Another experiment involved lobotomizing patients and recording their brain activity with electrodes attached to their skulls. Needless to say, many of the patients suffered greatly at the hands of the asylum staff. And it seems that some of them never really left. Paranormal investigators have reported hearing screams, laughter, and footsteps echoing through the asylum's long corridors. One investigator even captured an image of a ghostly figure standing in the corner of a room. They believe it may be the spirit of a patient who died during one of the asylum's infamous experiments. But perhaps the most disturbing story comes from the asylum's former superintendent. Dr. Harry Landwirtschaft was in charge of the asylum from 1925 to 1947. He oversaw many of the horrific experiments that were carried out on the patients and is said to be the most hated person in the asylum's history. Some say he was a monster who took great pleasure in tormenting his patients. Others say he was simply a product of his time, a man who believed he was doing his job to help the sickest people in society. Either way, he played a major role in shaping the asylum's dark history, and his legacy continues to haunt the halls of the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum to this day. From the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, we now turn our attention to the historic Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This imposing structure, with its towering gray walls and barred windows, is a symbol of America's sometimes brutal approach to criminal justice. At its opening in 1829, it was considered a progressive reform to the way criminals were punished. Instead of relying on harsh physical punishments such as solitary confinement, Eastern State focused on the rehabilitation of prisoners through hard work and education. However, as the years went on, the prison became increasingly violent and corrupt. Prisoners were often subjected to horrible conditions and brutal treatment by guards. In 1913, a riot broke out in which inmates protested the poor conditions. Guards responded with extreme force, killing several inmates. This event, along with a series of other scandals, led to the closure of Eastern State in 1995. Since then, it has opened its doors to the public for tours and events. However, it seems that some of its former inmates never really left. Paranormal investigators have reported hearing screams, whispers, and footsteps echoing through the prison's long corridors. Some have even claimed to see the ghosts of prisoners who died inside the prison walls. Perhaps the most famous ghost is that of Al Capone, the notorious mob boss who was imprisoned in Eastern State for tax evasion in 1930. Supposedly, his ghost can be seen wandering the prison yard at night. Others say they've seen the ghost of a prisoner who died in the prison infirmary. But perhaps the most disturbing story comes from one of the prison's former guards. During the 1940s, a guard was caught smuggling contraband into the prison in exchange for bribes. When this was discovered, he was fired and blacklisted from working in any other prison in the country. Consumed with shame and guilt, he took his own life. Some say his ghost still haunts the prison, forever searching for the contraband that he once smuggled. If you've watched until now, we thank you for joining us on this terrifying tour of abandoned asylums and prisons, where the ghosts of the past refuse to stay buried. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share for more terrifying tales, and be sure to join us next week for more scary stories. Until then, Keep your wits about you, and beware of the echoes of despair.